June 1st, 2011 was a day that changed the Waller family's life forever. A woman called her sister Cheryl and told her she was on her way to pick up her children from her ex-husband Clay and would return home later. But Jackie never returned and never called back. Concerned, Cheryl couldn't reach her, and anxious thoughts entered her mind. So around 7 p.m., she got into her car and headed to the police station. She made a stunning statement there. Cheryl stated that Clay Waller had killed her sister. It was a shocking statement to all the police officers, considering that Jackie had only called her a couple hours ago, and there was no reason yet to raise the alarm and assume she was in trouble. But it turns out Cheryl's premonition didn't fail her, and her sister was actually caught up in a creepy story. So what happened to Jackie, and what made Cheryl truly believe that her husband killed her sister even before Jackie was reported missing? Jackie was a very sweet, kind, and caring girl. When she met Clay, there was an instant liking between them. He had a speech impediment that made some people make fun of him. Clay felt awkward in that situation, but Jackie was not like the others. Not only did she not make fun of it, but she defended her lover and didn't let him get hurt. That was what Jackie was all about. She always protected the weak, fought injustice, and helped everyone. The couple began to meet. Their relationship rapidly developed. Soon Jackie and Clay got married. At that time, both were about 30 years old, and they wanted a big family. They bought a small house in Sanguine View, Missouri, and Jackie was setting up a family nest there. The woman had a successful career, which could not be said about her husband. His life was a series of failures, and he could not stay long in any place. Therefore, Jackie supported the entire family. The woman dreamed of children, but there were problems with this. Nevertheless, she made up her mind and did eco. Jackie was so happy when she found out about the pregnancy, and she was even happier when she found out that she would give birth to triplets. The family had 2 girls, Avery and Addison, and 1 boy, Maddox. It was very difficult for the woman to take care of 3 children at once, but she did not complain and continued to pull everything on herself, not counting on the help of her husband, who seemed to have no interest in the babies at all. At that point, Clay took a job with the sheriff's office to support the family, while his wife took care of the children. However, he didn't stay there for long. He was fired after a year. Only Jackie's parents and sister helped her with the children, so the woman could get some rest. Later, when Clay was fired, she began to devote time to work and support the whole family. Even after the children were born, Clay did not change his old habits and showed no interest in either his family or work. Only sometimes he went to some part-time work, but it did not bring the money that was expected of him in the family. It seems that he was satisfied with life at the expense of his wife, who worked 40 hours a week and took care of the children. Jackie's career took off, and she soon took a management position in a branch of an insurance company. But this only relaxed her husband, who now decided not to worry about money at all. Instead of appreciating his wife, Clay abused her in every possible way. He insulted her, called her worthless, and let her know that no one wanted her. He had relationships with other women, and the man behaved like a real abuser. Jackie's parents and sister were outraged by this behavior of her husband and convinced her to divorce him. However, the woman at that time was not ready for such a radical option and tried to keep the family together. Every day, all her hopes for saving the marriage were melting literally before her eyes. A few years later, they began to have problems. The couple had a difficult financial situation because the husband was not working, and Jackie's salary was not enough to cover all the expenses of their large family. The mortgage debts were growing, and soon they had their house foreclosed on. The woman decided to take advantage of the situation and go to live with her sister. The husband moved in with a friend. At that point, the children were a little older, and Jackie made the difficult but necessary decision for herself to divorce because she felt that she and her children deserved a better life. She talked to her husband about it, and initially Clay took the news calmly. However, he later changed his mind and refused to divorce. Clay began to threaten his wife. At first, the threats were indirect and detached. He just hinted at trouble. Then he moved on to direct threats to her life, claiming that if she divorced him, she would be signing a death warrant for herself and the children. All this frightened the woman, but she did not give up her decision. She just couldn't go on living like this and tried to get rid of her husband. Jackie complained about this behavior of her spouse to her family. She even kept a diary in which she recorded all his antics. Jackie also noticed that her husband was stalking her. For safety reasons, the woman and her children stayed with her sister. At that time, the children were 5 years old and did not understand what was going on, but Jackie explained to them that it was necessary. Over time, things normalized, and the divorce was nearing finalization. It seemed that the husband calmed down, took their separation as a given, and stopped bothering Jackie. The couple began to move on, and had already begun to build a relationship on the side. The woman allowed her husband to see the children, and they no longer had disputes. On June 1st, 2011, Clay and Jackie agreed to meet at the attorney's office to discuss the last important aspects of the divorce. On that day, the son, Maddox, was visiting his father while the other children were at Jackie's sister, Cheryl. After the meeting, Jackie was supposed to pick him up. She left the office, called her sister Cheryl on the way out, and told her that everything had gone well, and she was driving up to Clay's house to pick up her son, and then would go straight back to her sister's house. That was their last conversation. Jackie, 39, never made contact again. As time went on, the sister felt anxious and started calling Jackie, but she didn't answer. Then, the woman started calling Clay, but he didn't pick up either. Cheryl suspected that Clay had done something to her, so she texted him, "If I don't hear from Jackie in 5 minutes, I'm going to the police." The man immediately called her back and asked what was wrong. Cheryl replied to him that she was sure he knew exactly what she meant, but Clay claimed that he didn't know where Jackie was, and he would tell her to call Cheryl back when he saw her. Cheryl didn't believe the man. She took her sister's children to her parents' house and filed a police report herself. The detectives were wary of her claim that Clay was involved in her sister's disappearance, but didn't send her home to wait for 24 hours to pass. They got straight to the point and decided to contact her ex-spouse, looking for clues to her whereabouts. They called the man, and 41-year-old Clay said he had lunch with Jackie. They then met at the attorney's office, discussed some aspects of the divorce, and then drove to his house together to discuss some more issues. They chatted, and then he retreated to the store. When he returned, Jackie's car was gone, and he thought she had left. According to him, his son, Maddox, was in Illinois with his new girlfriend at the time, and the ex-wife was well aware of this and was not worried about the child. She wasn't coming to see him for her son, but just to talk to him. The man's words sounded implausible. Jackie had made it clear to her sister that she had gone to Clay's house for her son. She didn't plan to discuss anything with him, especially since she wouldn't have allowed her son to be with another woman so far away. She would definitely get angry with her ex in that situation. Cheryl just didn't believe the story. The woman convinced investigators that Clay was lying, hiding something, and things were really serious. The missing person and her car were reported missing, and a massive search for her began. After only a few hours, Jackie's car, a Honda Pilot, was found on an interstate highway with a flat tire. But it wasn't an accident. It turned out the tire had been punctured. It looked staged. The car was open and empty. There were a few bloodstains on the back seat, but no clues to the missing person's whereabouts. Everything seemed even more disturbing, as if the woman had been attacked and kidnapped. The search for Jackie centered in the area. There were many volunteers working at the site, in addition to police, rescuers, squads with dogs and relatives. They responded to requests from relatives and came from all over the area. The heat outside was unbearable, but that didn't stop people willing to help. The family announced a reward for information about Jackie's whereabouts in the amount of $3,500. Despite this, the search was unsuccessful. The police officers were looking more and more closely at the ex-husband, Clay. They arrived at his house to talk to him again. The man told the same story when the investigators asked to see his house and car. Then he flatly refused and immediately hired himself a lawyer, who began to assert his rights. 4 days after her disappearance, Clay left his wife a voicemail message in a crying voice. "Hi, honey. It's Sunday. You went missing on Wednesday. Please, if you got this message, call me. I don't know where you are and I miss you very much. Please call me." Detectives were later able to obtain a search warrant and return to his home for an inspection. Upon inspection of the vehicle, blood-like stains were found. Forensics collected blood samples and sent them for testing, but it showed that it was fish blood. It turned out that earlier Clay had deliberately coated the car with this blood and filmed it on video, setting up such a peculiar test for forensic experts. Upon inspection of the house, It was striking that there was no carpet on the floor. A piece of the flooring had simply been cut out, leaving an obvious mark. Also, tiny drops of blood were found on the walls of the hallway. In the basement, there were traces of furniture rearrangement. Something was clearly going on in the house. Forensics looked under the floorboards and found a bloody carpet. Blood samples from the house along with the carpet were sent to the laboratory for examination. Detectives have located the missing woman's last movements. At 11:00 a.m., she was spotted at a drugstore with her ex-husband. The couple appeared normal. 2 hours later, the woman was seen at an ATM withdrawing money. Jackie did not appear on CCTV again after that, and Clay was seen afterwards. A few hours later, the man and his son and new girlfriend headed to a toy store. Later, they arrived at the car wash in their pickup truck with a boat that had a suspicious trash can in it. Clay was already in different clothes and had thoroughly washed the car and boat. Clouds were gathering over Clay, and he became the prime suspect. Investigators released photos of the ex-husband's pickup truck and boat with a request for eyewitnesses who saw them. A young couple who saw Clay near Devil's Island on the Mississippi River responded to the request. Detectives were able to confirm this information through Clay's cell phone billing. So, cops put out a search effort in the area. Over and over they searched there, but found nothing. It was a huge area, but they felt that the solution to the mystery of the woman's disappearance was somewhere close by. By this time, the forensic results were ready, which showed that the drops of blood in Clay's house belonged to the missing Jackie. The police believed the woman was already dead. Detectives called the man in for questioning and persuaded him to confess to the murder, but he would not agree. Clay claimed it was old bloodstains from a domestic trauma in the kitchen. Without a body, investigators couldn't arrest the suspect and charge him. They released the man, but continued to monitor him and investigate. Clay, who had once worked as a deputy sheriff, was well aware that the police were watching him, and he played cat and mouse with them. He'd go to deserted vacant lots to confuse the investigation, while the entire neighborhood stood by and participated in the search for the missing mother of three. Clay continued to bully and taunt them. He would drive past the search party or Jackie's family, insult them, give them the middle finger, and shout after them that they were wasting their time and wouldn't find anything. His defiant behavior raised more and more suspicions and questions. Meanwhile, the missing woman's sister, Cheryl, fought in court for custody of the triplets. She feared the children would go to a father who was a danger. His erratic behavior backfired on him, and Cheryl got custody. This enraged him, and the man began threatening his ex-wife's sister with violence, including writing to her about it on social media. The woman recorded these threats and contacted police. Detectives seized the opportunity and arrested Clay nearly 5 months after Jackie's disappearance. He was charged with threats to life, which he accepted. But the man was no longer as defiant as he used to be. He claimed he wrote it out of anger and despair at losing custody of his beloved children, but didn't plan anything bad against Cheryl. Clay was sure that he was the victim in this situation. While investigating this incident with his sister, police found out that he had other charges pending against him for stealing $50,000 from a previous employer, as well as stalking a man. Detectives began pressing the former co-worker in hopes that he would still confess to killing his ex-wife and lead them to the body. But it was to no avail. Clay continued to deny all charges regarding Jackie's disappearance. Instead of confessing to the crime, he began to confidently claim that he knew who was behind his ex-wife's death. In his opinion, it was her new lover named Harry. But the detectives explained that they had checked this version, and Harry had an ironclad alibi that allowed them to cross him off the list of suspects. Everything pointed only to Clay, but he kept denying it anyway. He ended up going to prison for 5 years for threatening Cheryl. While the police locked him up in jail, they continued to investigate Jackie's disappearance. The search for the missing woman continued on Devil's Island, but never yielded any results. Eventually, about 2 years after Jackie's disappearance, the cops, after gathering a lot of circumstantial evidence, video camera footage, blood in his house and more, decided to charge Clay with his ex-wife's murder, even without her body. It was a risky and desperate move, because if they lost, the prosecutor's office would not be able to charge him a second time. But the prosecutor was determined. After consulting with his accomplices, Clay concluded that it would be best for them to make a deal with the prosecution to reduce the sentence. To do so, the defendant offered to plead guilty to the murder and provide the location of the body. Jackie's family agreed to this deal because it was important to give her a decent burial. Clay led police officers to his ex-wife's body. It was in a secluded spot on a remote sandbar on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. At first he couldn't remember exactly which tree he had buried her under, but then he admitted that he had placed a bag of fertilizer on top of her body. One of the policemen, who was an active gardener, explained that large quantities of fertilizer kill trees. They looked around and found 3 dead trees that were of interest to them. They excavated there, and under one of the trees they did find Jackie's body, wearing the same clothes she had last been seen in. The woman was identified from dental records as Jackie Wohler. Finally, Jackie's loved ones recognized that she was definitely dead and found her body. Then they were able to commit her to the ground. The woman's funeral was held on her parents' golden wedding day. Cheryl told the children that their mom was gone and she had been killed by their father. This event was a great shock to the children because they lost both their mother and father at once. The children hated Clay from that moment on and refused to communicate with him. Now, as part of the deal, Clay had to officially confess to killing his ex-wife and give details. The man explained that the first thoughts of murder began to come into his head a year before the bloody event, when Jackie announced to him about the breakup. But he pushed the bad thoughts away from him. After all, Jackie was the mother of his children. However, he couldn't allow the woman to take his children away from him. He warned Jackie that it would end badly for her, but she didn't listen, and that was her fault. The man confessed that the night before the murder, he had traveled to that secluded spot on Devil's Island to dig a grave for Jackie there. Clay at that moment thought of taking her life. According to him, their divorce was generally going smoothly. That day, after the visit to the lawyer, they talked, and she suggested that they have sex for the last time. At that point, they headed to his home. Once home, they talked in the kitchen. Meanwhile, the man looked in the refrigerator for a snack. Clay accidentally raised his head and bumped her head, causing Jackie's nose to bleed. This made her angry. She went out into the hallway where she stained the walls with blood and started yelling at him that he would never see his children. That's when the man couldn't take it anymore and lashed out at her. He hit her once in the face with his hand and then strangled her. After that, he took the body out in the same dumpster and buried it in a pre-dug grave. After that, he thoroughly washed the car, cleaned the house, took a shower, changed his clothes, and, as if nothing had happened, went to meet his new girlfriend and son at the toy store. At the same time, the man claimed that everything happened on impulse, on emotion, and he did not intend to kill Jackie. This contradicted his earlier statement that he had dug the grave the day before. However, if Clay did not intend to kill the woman, why did he dig the grave beforehand? It seemed like a premeditated murder. The medical examiner determined that the deceased had multiple skull fractures, indicating blunt force rather than a simple fist beating. No one believed his story. Clay, who never repented for killing his ex-wife, was already jubilant, happy with only 20 years in prison for second-degree murder and the possibility of getting out early. The prosecutor, however, had another card up his sleeve. Clay's testimony about the grave buried him. The hole was dug by him in another state, Illinois, and the murder itself took place in Missouri. These features fell under the federal law against domestic violence facts across state lines, and he violated it. It allowed him to add an additional 35 years to his sentence. Clay Wohler will become eligible for parole after serving 85% of his 55-year sentence. As it turned out, Clay did not even know about such a law and did not anticipate the consequences of his confession. But the defendant's atrocities did not end there. Clay added cynicism to the story and wrote a book detailing Jackie's murder to capitalize on the tragedy. The sister of the deceased said Cheryl and her husband continue to raise her children as relatives. In this, they are helped by their elderly parents. The children have grown up and remember their mom as the best person in the world, who has forever remained in their hearts. They are still mad at their dad and miss their mom. Share your opinion in the comments and also put likes if you found this story interesting. But also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.